Welcome to the first episode of Break the Silence with Cyborg. We're going to get straight into it. In this, I've always been very passionate about sports, mainly focused on NBA and NFL in the sports world, but I also really enjoy things like UFC, boxing, things like that. So we might address on those things at times. But I'm just going to get straight into it. Big NBA games last night. Second round of the playoffs, semifinals. It's 2022. There are 8 teams currently remaining. Last night featured the Boston Celtics versus the Milwaukee Bucks. It was an electric game. The series was 2-1 in favor of Milwaukee. This game was in Milwaukee, so really the biggest game to the series to this point, obviously. If the Celtics went in and lost that, Milwaukee, you go down 3-1. Almost never happens that you come back from that. So this was a must-win for the Boston Celtics. If you're Milwaukee, you kind of also feel like it is a must-win as well, because you don't want to give up home court. You had stolen it when you won Game 1 in Boston. So you go into Game 4 thinking, let's take a 3-1 commanding lead, especially without Chris Middleton. You don't want to miss opportunities there when you have a big injury. Milwaukee led for a majority of this game. Kind of the feel of it after 3 quarters was it reminded you of Game 3 when Milwaukee, it's kind of close in the first half. Boston just didn't look like they had a good rhythm. Milwaukee was terrible offensively, but it was a really close game at halftime. In Game 3, Boston had a 5-point lead last night. I think Milwaukee was up at the half. They came out in the third quarter where Boston has been good all year. That's kind of been their quarter, and Milwaukee just dominated. They took a nice lead going into the fourth quarter, and at that point you kind of felt like it's the same Boston Celtics team that I've watched for the last 5 years with Tatum and Brown and Horford and Smart, where they kind of give you hope. They kind of make you think maybe it's our year, but then they let you down. But this Boston Celtics team is different. Shocked me, but they're different. They came out in the fourth quarter, in large part due to Al Horford having literally the best game I've ever seen him play in the time I've watched Al Horford. And I know his playoff track record is not very good. He's had some good regular seasons with the Hawks. They were the 1 seed a couple times, but never any real playoff success. So Al Horford gets dunked on by Giannis Antetokounmpo, who stares him down, gets a taunting technical, which is pretty rare in the playoffs. But and you see Al Horford just kind of just shake his head like, okay, noted. And I don't know what flipped in Al Horford, but he played unbelievable basketball to keep the Celtics in that game when pretty much everyone else was struggling. He finished the game with 30 and 8. Including 16 in the fourth quarter on no misses, which is unbelievable. He was hitting threes. He drove by Giannis, dunked on Giannis Antetokounmpo, which not many people can boast. They got a technical on the way down when he kind of elbowed him in the face. Wasn't on purpose. Might have not moved his elbow out of the way on purpose there. But he played just well enough to give Tatum time to finally get out of this funk he's been in. Tatum was terrible in Game 3. Just didn't play to the level we've watched Jayson Tatum play for the last 5 months now, since January. Tatum had been unbelievable, and then in Game 3, it was like he just was out of rhythm. Even his open shots, he wasn't all that close on. Like he's missing, barely hitting the rim. And that's when you start to get worried about a player when they're so out of rhythm that they just like even their open shots don't look good. Their free throws don't look as good as normal. You can start to tell they're just not on that night. Tatum last night for the first half was having another one of those games. He in the first quarter was 1 of 5 on wide open threes with no one surrounding him. They set a screen, he would come around it, have this wide open shot that is usually money for Jayson Tatum, and clanked all 5 of them, or 4 of the 5. Crazy frustrating to watch because we know what Jayson Tatum's capable of Giannis Antetokounmpo was having another one of those games where, you just felt like he was the best player in the world. I was telling someone the other day, it's reminiscent of LeBron during those years in the East where it was like no one could really compete with him. He was just on another level from everybody else. Now, it'll be interesting to see. We're now down to a 3-game series, 2 of those games being in Boston. As a Celtics fan, obviously, I'm hoping the Celtics pull that out, but I would not feel overly confident going to a Game 7 in Milwaukee, or a Game 7 against Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, it'd be in Boston, but against Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't feel... Game 7s are weird. We saw Giannis in an important game against Phoenix last year drop a 50-piece. You got to be careful. He's a different animal. And their three-point shooting has not been good all series. They haven't had one game where their three-point shot has been going. And you have to believe that at some point those start to fall. Maybe not, but you'd imagine in one game that their three-point shooting is hot. So we'll see. The Celtics do look like the better team. They've had some really tough stretches. But Al Horford's ability to shoot the 3 ball has really exploited Milwaukee's drop coverage where Brook Lopez is just defending the paint. And Al Horford does his little pick and pop, and it's a wide open 3 every time. Or he's standing in the corner, and it's a wide open 3 anytime Jayson Tatum gets past Wesley Matthews, because Brook Lopez is coming in and helping so much. And it's been tough for the Celtics to get points in the paint, which I was really worried about after watching Game 1, because the Celtics are not really a great three-point shooting team. They're not bad, and everyone can kind of make shots, but none of them are like snipers. Peyton Pritchard kind of was your best one. Grant Williams has shot unbelievable in the playoffs. He didn't shoot very well last night, but he's been unbelievable. Tatum on open threes has been really hot in the last 4 months. There's stretches you watch him and he just like drills 4 or 5 in a row, even contested ones. Jaylen Brown is game 2 was shooting the lights out, but he's not really like not a consistent 3-point shooter. Marcus Smart obviously is hit or miss as well. Daniel Tice played terrible last night. It was one of the worst games I've seen Daniel Tice play, which made you miss Rob Williams. I think Celtics would have looked better in that game had Rob Williams been out there. But they pulled it out. They showed in the fourth quarter something that I have not seen. My complaint with the Celtics over the last 5 years is I don't think they have a closer. You watch some teams and you feel like in big moments there's guys who are just going to just go get you a bucket. Feels like Kevin Durant's one of those guys. Chris Middleton's one of those guys. Kawhi Leonard is one of those guys. They're just going to get you a bucket in a big moment. Last night, Jayson Tatum did. He came through in the clutch, was unbelievable in the fourth quarter because he really wasn't playing very well. Finished with 30, 13, and 5, which is, that's amazing considering what you kind of felt like the flow of the game was. He hit a couple shots in the fourth quarter. There was one he was literally parallel to the ground, and he flipped it up. He was trying to draw a foul, and it somehow went in the basket. And at that point, you knew he's on. It's just one of those nights where he's like, we're not losing this game. Al Horford carried me to that point, and we're not losing this game. Giannis, he played all right. His counting numbers look good. He finished with 34 and 18, but he was on 14 of 32 shooting, which as a Celtics fan, we'll take, because if you're making Giannis shoot under 50%, that's about all you can hope for, because the majority of his shots are in the paint. So it's not like those are 3-point shots. If you're shooting that percentage on 3-point shots, then that's obviously way better. But he's not hitting any threes. He's also not hitting his free throws very well. Giannis looked really gassed in the fourth quarter. If you did notice that, there were a couple times he just laid on the ground. You could tell he was out of gas. But he's asked to do so much. Drew Holiday was terrible. He was 5 of 22. Bobby Portis didn't even play last night. I'm not sure what was going on there. Brook Lopez for short stretches has looked good offensively. And then they just got a couple guys who are just catch and shoot guys that aren't really great at it. Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen kind of guy, George Hill kind of guys. But if they had Chris Middleton, I think it would be interesting to see how last night would have played out. Games 1 and 3 obviously went to Milwaukee. Celtics kind of blew them out in Game 2. I think it was a 25-point game. Game 1 wasn't all that close. Milwaukee won by 12. Game 3, obviously, Horford almost tipped it in at the buzzer. Game 4, though, Milwaukee, that's one that you wish you had back. If you take a 3-1 series lead, you're probably not losing that with Giannis Antetokounmpo on your team. And I think such a big part of the Celtics' success is their mental. That's what you saw in the second half of the season. Jaylen Brown had that tweet about the energy has shifted. It did feel like it, but it felt like the psyche of the team was in such a better place than what you had seen in the previous years that, you actually started to maybe believe that this team was actually different. So we'll see. Game 5 coming up on Wednesday. I'm curious to see how Giannis looks because he tried to do so much last night, and in the third quarter, he was utterly dominant. It was like every possession, he was just running straight at you and getting a layup, and the Celtics couldn't do much about it. Something to keep your eye on. In the fourth quarter, Smart started to guard Giannis, which I hadn't seen at all in the series up to this point. And I don't know if it's because Al Horford was kind of gassed and they didn't play Grant Williams, which I'm not sure why. Derek White was having a good night, so maybe that's why they kept Grant on the bench. But Smart did a really good job against Giannis in the fourth quarter. Now, it might have been because he was gassed. But I'm just interested to see if the Celtics try to unlock that or try to do anything as far as that goes. The one thing that the Bucks had success on in Game 2, I believe, when they lost, that I wanted to keep an eye on was they would have Giannis be the screen man, and then the Celtics help so much to make sure that Giannis doesn't roll and get an open shot that they were just giving up layups to the man who, was dribbling the basketball, whether that was Drew or Pat Connaughton or whoever that was. Interested to see the chess match because it's been an unbelievable series. Coaching-wise, Ime Udokah, can't say enough good things about him. The way he has this team playing is truly unbelievable. The defense is awesome to watch. They play really hard. Every player's bought in, which kind of shocks me. Oftentimes you don't see every player on a team bought into the defensive side of the ball. There's liabilities. Derek White's small, but he plays hard. And thank goodness he's playing better because he was struggling. He's had a couple horrible games to start the series. But going into Wednesday night game, it'll be interesting to see what adjustments that Mike Budenholzer tries to make. Does he play someone maybe we haven't seen before? Brook Lopez they're just not using him very much. And I don't know if he's just not capable, but I wonder if they at all try to use him a little more in the offense. I don't even know that I remember him taking any threes in this series, hardly at all. Giannis has got to stop shooting threes. Those are absolutely wasted possessions. He also shot one last night. Early in the shot clock, dribbled up, shot it, led to a long rebound where the Celtics got a fast break bucket. The Bucks defense has been good enough in the half court. The only way you give up a lot of points is if you give easy buckets to the Celtics. And so shooting bad threes and long rebounds and letting the Celtics get out in transition is easy buckets for the Celtics and really gives them a chance to fight back. We'll see what happens in Game 5. A lot of people are picking the Celtics to win this series. I'm a Celtics fan, and it's been I think it's hard to predict when you're looking at it from a fan's perspective. I do try to break it down, but when you are looking at it from a fan's perspective, you do tend to overemphasize the good and the bad from your team. So I actually had picked the Bucks in this series because of kind of what I said earlier. I think Giannis is just on another level. And in a game 7, I wouldn't feel good about Giannis Antetokounmpo being on the other side. I don't know if there's any chance Chris Middleton comes back. As far as the reports are that he's not. But I don't know. You never know on those things. Rob Williams should be back next game, which I think is a good piece for the Celtics. He has kind of had a rough playoff stretch here. Still looks like he's not 100% himself. His mid-range game is interesting. He's kind of turned in a couple good mid-range shots, which I didn't know he had in his game. He didn't really show it most of the season, and then he's hit a couple nice little mid-rangers. But yeah, we'll see what happens here. That's my analysis of Game 4 of the Celtics Bucks. We'll be back shortly with analysis of the next game. See ya.